Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Okay, I know. What a crazy title, right? The Golden Calf in the End Times. I mean, how in the world can the golden calf found in the account after the Exodus from Egypt have anything to do with the end times? Well, you might be surprised. Now, if you haven't seen these teachings, you'll want to by the end of this teaching. The image of the beast, the return of the tent, watching for that day, and also 1/3. They aren't required for this teaching, but I believe you'll see how they all flow together. As you've heard me say in multiple different teachings, Isaiah 46:10 says, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. Now, it doesn't say all things are identical. However, we can see cyclical patterns in many different accounts to the end times. There are many parallels and similarities found in the scriptures. Even with the 10 plagues and what we see in Revelation, one can see interesting parallels. Not necessarily exact, but notable similarities just the same. And I believe by the time I'm done here, you'll see there are definitely some interesting similarities with the golden calf incident. In the account of the golden calf, I believe there's a misconception that many have regarding that incident. The people didn't abandon Yahweh, as many believe. They simply put an image to Yahweh. They were trying to worship Yahweh in the ways the other nations worshipped their gods. They had just left a society that worshipped their gods by way of images of gold. So this was something they were familiar with, something they identified with as the right thing to do. It was how the society they came from honored their gods. So, in their mind, it was an acceptable thing to do. So they wanted to do the same. They did so by way of making an idol unto Yahweh. But this was something Yahweh told them not to do before Moses went up the mountain. Regardless of who it was for or honored, it was something Yahweh had forbidden them to do. However, their mindset was still on Yahweh. They simply applied the image they made to Yahweh. So to them, this act was justified because it was done in His honor. The mediator of the new covenant, that being Moses, was taking a long time in coming down from the mountain. In fact, they assumed he was dead. So they wanted an idol that would serve as a mediator for them in his place. Let's take a few minutes and read through the account to see how this wasn't an act of abandoning Yahweh, but rather an act of disobedience that Yahweh forbid to happen. Exodus 31. When Yahweh finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, He gave him 2 tablets of the testimony, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. When the people saw that Moses was a long time coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Now let's hit pause here for a moment and discuss a few important elements to this verse. First, the word for gods here in this verse is Elohim. This exact same word is used for Yahweh in multiple accounts throughout the scriptures. Genesis 1:9, Genesis 1:11, Genesis 1:24, Genesis 17:19, Genesis 35:5, Exodus 3:13, Exodus 13:17, and Exodus 14:19. So, the context in this verse could have them easily referring to making an image of Yahweh and not making other gods. Let me say that again. The context in this verse could have them easily referring to making an image of Yahweh and not making other gods. Next, there is no Hebrew word for will here, so they aren't talking about a future tense. The word for go here is the plural word for walk, so it should say walks. This is truly critical to understanding what's going on in this text. Now, let's continue back with our verse, but let's reread the verse with the corrected words from the Hebrew text. Again, Exodus 32, starting in verse 1. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us Elohim who walks before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So they were wanting a replacement for Moses, a tangible mediator for them, something they were used to from the culture they came from. They weren't replacing Yahweh. They wanted something to help them connect to Yahweh in their understanding from the traditions they were used to. Continuing on, verse 2. Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." Now, please note that the Hebrew adds the masculine singular suffix here to Elohim. Plus, this same form of Elohim for gods is also used here in Exodus 20, verse 5. So they weren't saying it was other gods. They were saying it was Yahweh. Also, the context is showing they are declaring this is the Elohim that delivered them out of Egypt. Again, they weren't abandoning Yahweh. They were declaring this was Yahweh. They tried making an image to identify to as a mediator for them, something they were not supposed to do. The next verse confirms even more how this was an idol set up in honor of Yahweh. Exodus 32:5. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to Yahweh." There's no question here as Aaron calls him by name. So while their intent may have been wanting to do good, they were still disobeying. Yahweh said not to make any idols. In Deuteronomy, he made it even more specific to not worship him in the ways of the pagan gods. So why did I just go through all of that? What's the parallel to the end times here? In the end times, many will believe they're worshiping Yahweh, but they won't be. They were looking for a mediator. They thought Moses was never coming back. What did they do? They resorted back to what they knew. The golden calf incident is very similar to what will happen in the end times. Compare the similarities. Moses goes up on the mountain with intention of coming back for 40 days. Yeshua goes up to heaven with intention of coming back for 2,000 years. That just happens to be 40 jubilees. Moses comes down and sees the people dancing around the golden calf. Remember, they were doing so unto Yahweh, but they were utilizing the golden calf to do so, something Yahweh forbid. When Yeshua comes down, what will he see? Let me give you some concerns I have regarding this. While I understand there are many idols in the world today, I really believe this is going to be dealing with something specific, namely the Ark of the Covenant. Many will be celebrating when the Ark comes out, Jews and Christians alike. Some might say, "But Steve, what's the difference of this from King David dancing when the Ark was brought back?" If King David danced before Yahweh when the Ark came back then, don't you think they'll dance before the Ark when it comes back again? Great question and great point. Herein lies the problem. The end is going to look so much like the real thing that even the elect will be deceived if that were possible. It's all about deception, as Yeshua said. You don't deceive people with a bold lie. You deceive people with what appears to be the real thing. In fact, in the end times, we're told fire will come down from heaven just as it did with Solomon at the time of the dedication of the temple. Many things are going to be duplicated from what happened in the Old Testament. So, when the ark comes out, it'll be perceived as a good thing. The problem with celebrating when the ark comes out is that it's actually the people resorting back to what once was, just as they did when Moses was on the mountain. Remember, the Ark of the Covenant represents the Old Covenant, that which Yeshua brought to an end on the cross when he said, "It is finished." Just as Moses came bringing a new covenant, likewise, Yeshua is doing the same. But how will the Ark of the Covenant come out? Will someone dig it out? Will an earthquake reveal its location? Could a missile from a localized war with Israel reveal where it's hidden? I don't know. We'll come back to how and why I believe the ark will play a role in the end times in a moment. Let's continue with the parallels. Moses calls for all who are on Yahweh's side to stand behind him. The Levites then join him, the tribe from which the priesthood comes. Yeshua calls for all the faithful, the wise virgins, those who will become part of the eternal priesthood after the millennium. In similar fashion to the law of the jealous husband found in Numbers chapter 5, Moses destroys the calf and makes the people drink the bitter cup. Likewise, Yeshua gives the world bitter water to drink in Revelation chapter 8. Now, while at first glance we assume the people die immediately because of the water in this verse in Revelation chapter 8. And that's very possible. However, it could also be that the waters simply identify who is to be killed later at Armageddon. Again, these accounts are a parallel of the law of the jealous husband found in Numbers chapter 5, where the unfaithful wife is given the bitter cup to drink. Then Moses commands the Levites to kill the adulterers after they drank it, those who worshipped the golden calf. If this is a true parallel to Numbers chapter 5, then the guilty were marked. They knew exactly who to kill. Numbers chapter 5 says the guilty will have a swollen abdomen and weakened thighs. Just as Moses commanded the guilty to be killed, likewise, Yeshua leads the 144,000 in the Battle of Armageddon to kill those found guilty. The guilty were marked by the painful sores. I believe these events bear interesting similarities, especially when we remember Isaiah 46:10. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. Now, can this be applied to the 4 fasts that are turned to feasts? Absolutely. In fact, the 4 fasts are all about vengeance on Babylon, as noted in Revelation. Babylon destroyed the temple by fire. What do we see happen to Babylon in Revelation? It's burned by fire. This could easily happen on the 10th day of the 5th month. The 10th day of the 5th month is the anniversary of the temple being burned down. As noted in our teaching, 1/3, it's in the 5th month that could very likely begin the time of the tribulation. If you haven't seen that teaching, we strongly encourage you to do so after this one. The 4 fasts that are turned to feasts are all about the Babylonian invasion. According to 2 Maccabees, this was the reason and timing that the ark was hidden. Jeremiah hid the articles just before this time frame. He said they would remain unknown until the time that God gathers his people together again and receives them unto mercy. It will be at that time the glory of Yahweh is revealed. How appropriate would it be for the ark and the tabernacle to come out in the exact same time frame of them being hidden, within the time frame of the 4 fasts? As noted in our teaching 1/3, we have to wonder about the 7th day of the 5th month as well. The 7th day was a significant day in history that many overlook, and it can very easily be a significant day to come just the same. It can fit rather well when we look at the timing of how everything happened with the golden calf. Moses was just finishing up on the mountain when the people started making the golden calf. When you think about how long it would have taken to collect the gold, to make the mold, sculpt it, and once it was finished, declare the next day as a feast to Yahweh. It could have easily been the 3rd day when Moses came down and seen them dancing all around the golden calf. Likewise, could we see the ark, the tabernacle, and the altar come out and the people rejoicing over it as they did with the golden calf, all taking place just days before Yeshua comes down, just like with Moses. As we just saw in 2 Maccabees, the revealing of the ark will be in the same time frame Yahweh gathers his people together. Remember, the covenant Moses brought was a new covenant to them, just as it is with Yeshua now. Again, many parallels to be considered here. If they had just waited a few more days for Moses. Likewise, could the ark coming out be the wake-up call to the 10 virgins as noted in Matthew 25? An event that says, "Here he comes." Not only would it make sense that these articles come out at the time of them being buried, that being the time of the 4 fasts, but there's more evidence that suggests it will be specifically with the fast of the 5th month. The 5th month. You see, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was a sect that added feasts to be observed. Feasts that aren't mentioned in the Torah. The Essenes added the feasts of new wine and new oil. The festival of new wine would come within the 1st week of the 5th month. Did you catch that? It came in the 1st week of the 5th month. Again, these were added feasts. Now, knowing this new wine festival was added by men and not noted in the Torah, please consider the following. Amos chapter 8. In that day declares sovereign Yahweh, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. I will turn your religious feasts into mourning and all your singing into weeping. I will make all of you wear sackcloth and shave your heads. I will make that time like mourning for an only son, and the end of it like a bitter day. The records in the Dead Sea Scrolls shows they added other feasts. The Feast of New Wine was one of them, a feast that took place in the 5th month. He said, I will turn your feasts into mourning. Could this added festival of new wine be that which Yahweh is discussing in Amos 8? With all of that in mind, please consider how Isaiah 24 discusses a coming judgment that appears to be a global earthquake where the new wine dries up. Isaiah 24, starting in verse 1. See, Yahweh is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants. Now, jumping to verse 7. The new wine dries up, and the vine withers. All the merrymakers groan. The gaiety of the tambourines is stilled. The noise of the revelers has stopped. The joyful harp is silent. This verse here implies something was going on, some kind of feast, some kind of celebration. Verse 9. No longer do they drink wine with a song. The beer is bitter to its drinkers. The ruined city lies desolate. The entrance to every house is barred. In the streets they cry out for wine. All joy turns to gloom. All gaiety is banished from the earth. Again, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, this feast of new wine the people added took place in the first part of the 5th month. Now, according to the Mishnah, Tu B'Av was a joyous holiday that supposedly marked the time for the beginning of the grape harvest. It was a time the unmarried girls dressed in white garments and went out to dance in the vineyards. Tu B'Av falls on the 15th day of the 5th month. So, the middle of the 5th month is considered the general timing of the grape harvest. Now, why is this important? Please consider Isaiah 18. All you people of the world, you who live on the earth, when a banner is raised on the mountains, you will see it. And when a trumpet sounds, you will hear it. This is what Yahweh says to me. I will remain quiet and will look on from my dwelling place. Like shimmering heat in the sunshine, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For before the harvest, when the blossom is gone and the flower becomes a ripening grape, he will cut off the shoots with pruning knives, and cut down and take away the spreading branches. They will all be left to the mountain birds of prey and to the wild animals. The birds will feed on them all summer, the wild animals all winter. These verses in Isaiah implies judgment just before the grape harvest, that which has normally taken place in the middle of the 5th month. So, according to Amos, we see a judgment coming at the time of a man-made feast. We then see judgment taking place in Isaiah 24 at the time new wine is being discussed, reminiscent of the new wine festival at the start of the 5th month. Isaiah 18 shows judgment taking place right before the grape harvest, that which has normally taken place in the middle of the 5th month. Why is all of this important to note? Because we see Zechariah discuss the 4 fasts that are turned to feasts. It just so happens that the fast of the 5th month lands on the 10th day of that month, right after the Feast of New Wine has begun, and right before the grape harvest officially begins at Tu B'Av, the 15th day of the 5th month. This puts the fast of the 5th month that is turned into a feast right in the middle. This fast lands exactly in the time frame noted in the prophets when judgment is to begin. And this is the fast we also showed in the teaching 1/3 that could most likely be the start of the tribulation. Do we just ignore all of this as coincidence? Maybe. Some might say how the 5th month has already passed now and we have at least a year to go. Well, it may be passed on the calendar you follow, but not on the calendar we follow. To understand what calendar we follow, you can see our teaching titled, The Calendar. But either way, I believe we're seeing something here we can't ignore. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm simply saying these are elements we need to keep in mind every time the calendar cycles around to this time of year. So, will these parallels with Moses, the bearer of a new covenant, play out with Yeshua when he comes to confirm the new covenant? Well, time will tell. Will the fast of the 5th month, which takes place right between the festival of the new wine and the grape harvest, prove to be the start of the tribulation? Again, time will tell. However, I believe it would be prudent for all of us to pray and seek wisdom on these elements as we all continue to grow and seek understanding in Him on these topics. Well, that's all I have. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.